Understanding conflict is the first of the three modules that we're going to be working on. But before we get started, I want you to think about a conflict you've recently had, gone through, either personally or professionally. Something that has happened recently or in the past, something that sticks with you. Reflect on that conflict. You don't have to share this conflict at any time during this training at all. You can keep it personal. Write it down. Nobody's going to pick it up. Nobody's going to collect it. But just think back of that last conflict. Who said what? What was it about? What happened? What was the result? I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about that and write it down. We're going to refer back to that conflict throughout the day. And you won't have to share any information that you don't want to. No one's going to pick this up and collect it. All right, very good. You got one in your head. Well, let's first start off with the definition of conflict. This is one I like. There are several out there. I've picked this one in particular. What I want you to do is read it. Think about the conflict you had, the one you're thinking about, the one you wrote down, and tell me, does this definition fit your experience? Some situation in which people have moment in time, incompatible goals, incompatible interests, principles, or feelings. Does that work? Is that your conflict too? Mike, you too? All right. So based on this definition, how many people do you suppose it takes to have a conflict?
More than one.
More than one, yeah. Because most people, any situation whatsoever. But actually, it doesn't take, most people, two people to tango. No. It only takes one person to have a conflict, not two. So, for example, have you ever had a conflict with yourself? And one of the things I like to ask, did you have any struggles coming here today? When the alarm clock went off, did you really want to be here? Right? Yeah. Good answer. I love it. My favorite, you're now the teacher's pet. Excellent job. Well done. So, or in a diet. Anybody ever been on a diet? Yeah, now see, or an exercise routine where, I'm supposed to get up, I'm supposed to go to the work, I'm supposed to, I don't really want to. And that alarm clock goes off, I'm supposed to get up and run a mile. And I don't want to. I just want to hit the snooze button, roll back into bed, crawl, stay in that warm, cozy situation. I have a conflict with myself. I have incompatible goals. I don't want to hurt. I don't want to be in pain. I don't want to be breathing heavy out there because I can't catch my breath because I'm just walked, down the stairs to go outside to run. And yet, right, I don't want to do all those things, and yet I also have the goal of losing 5 pounds or, something like that, incompatible goals. Not only that, this definition includes people, but do we only have conflicts with people? No, I I often have conflicts with inanimate objects. Take the workplace, the office space. What's the number one device most people end up in a conflict with in an office?
Space.
Object in an office environment. What do you have kind of a yes, it'll be a computer. My experience is it's the copier.
Oh, the copier.
People are constantly having conflict with the copier. You know, it jams, we're having technical difficulties, you just want to beat this thing up, right? My goals are not being met when this paper jams, right? And then of course I have to go get somebody. Or that other technical device, say at the home, that causes so many conflicts. For my generation was the VCR, that little blinking. Wait, what does that mean? What am I supposed to be doing? Where's the manual, right? So many technical difficulties. So there are many situations where an incompatible goal, an incompatible interest, feelings or principles in those moments create conflict. So it's not just between two people. Conflict has a negative image. A lot of people, when they think about conflict, a negative image pops into their head. So technically, conflict actually needs a new PR person. Someone to help market for them because they've got a negative image in their public relations area. When you hear the word conflict, what pops into your head? Negative images. What pops into your head?
Brain fart.
Yeah, nothing. Negative images, anything.
Fighting.
Fighting. Yeah, definitely. What else? Pops into your head when you think of conflict.
Raised voices.
Raised voices, right? Loud arguments. What else? Maureen, you got one?
I was just negative, hostile kind of relationships.
Yes, hostility.
Goes along with it.
Oh, absolutely. There are so many negative things we think of. Hostility, frustration, stress that's created from, right? All the health problems that can be related to blood pressure and stress in our systems, lest we can deal with that. Hurt pain, hurt feelings over, we carry for betrayals that we carry with us over long periods of time. Revenge, that's one I happen to be working on personally in my life. My therapist and I actually working on. I had this perception that if you hurt me, then I was going to hurt you back, kind of, tit for tat. And that this really wasn't over until I felt like you had suffered enough for having caused my suffering, right? And then one day, fine, okay, you've suffered enough. We're good now, right? Well, no. I mean, what kind of professional or personal relationship is that where I'm, seeking revenge or carrying out that revenge? So obviously this was a non-productive response that I had developed over the years. I can't tell you exactly where it came from, but definitely being unproductive. Rage. I was doing this training in Texas one time, and one of the people in the audience said, "Oh, we don't have road rage in Texas." I said, "Really?" Yeah, so we all carry guns. I said, "Well, that would do it." Yeah, I'm not going to be shaking my fist. All of these things get associated with conflict, so most people, when they think about conflict, don't want these things in their life, so consequently, do everything they can to avoid conflict. We have more conflict avoidance skills in this culture than we have conflict management skills. We end up teaching our children, learn to share, don't argue, don't fight. But when it comes that moment in time when there's something worth fighting for, but you have no skills to fight for it respectfully and responsibly, then what are we teaching our kids? Those points. So we end up as adults without the kind of skills. No, positive things can also come out of conflict. What do you think of? Change, yes. And a lot of times change can be good. We need to move on. We need to get things different in our lives. What else? Intimacy, and also a part of that. You've been here before, sir. A repeat offender. What else? Positive things come out of conflict.
Learning.
Learning, absolutely. Learning about you, learning about me, absolutely. There are just as many positive things that come out of conflict, and yet we don't associate often these things. You can't have growth, even in the industry, for a team, in a department. You can't have individual personal growth without conflict in your life. Listening improves, learning, self-learning in others. Harmony can increase out of conflict. Communication improves, cooperation, and intimacy. Increased, and you cannot have intimacy without conflict. I was doing this actually for the military at Dobbins not too long ago. And one of the soldiers had read the book ahead of time, and he said, that's the one thing that bothered me. You said early on in the book that increased. How do you have intimacy out of conflict? But think about it. If we're in a relationship and we are exactly identical to each other, everything I like, you like. Everything I dislike, you dislike. We have nothing about us that's different. Well, how boring is that relationship? I mean, one of us is redundant. we don't. We don't need one of us, all right, at this point. One's enough. Intimacy is the nurturing of that space that defines our differences. You have your ideas, you have your opinions, you have your needs, you have your core fears, so do I, that we act out of. It's that creates the conflict, and to be able to nurture that creates the intimacy. Now, I don't care if you're talking personally. Obviously, we have plenty of benefits in here to be able to talk to people about improving their personal relationships. Professionally as well. But in the professional context, we don't talk about increasing intimacy in the workplace. Too many HR issues. Concerned with that. We don't enough of that going on as it is, right? But you can't have team. You cannot build a team without conflict as well. That's really what we're talking about, that connection, that increased productivity of working together, whether it's personally or professionally, literally are byproducts of conflict. So if we spend most of our time pushing conflict out of our lives, not inviting it in, not effectively dealing with it, then we're losing productivity, we're losing team environment, we are losing intimacy in our personal lives. Yes?
Instead of saying, let me just play devil's advocate, what would be another descriptor for teamness having conflict? Is it more tension versus conflict? Would retching down the word conflict be tension versus?
In other words, how would a team demonstrate their differences?
For a team to be most productive, they must have some kind of conflict.
Well, they call it the storming stage in the 5 stages of
storming, yeah.
Right, that would be the storming stage.
So, but would it be appropriate, as we're teaching it, to find it as maybe tension that could lead to me, conflict is sort of a higher level difference and discussion of different points of view versus tension.
Well, let's go ahead and go to the high level. But yeah, if we want to talk about just disagreement or dispute, discussion, dispute, disagreement, conflict, if you want to put those levels on them, that would be just as fine. The question is, at what point do we get to engage these skills? So even at the level of tension, if we don't call it conflict, okay. I was talking about fighting, and one person in the room was very uncomfortable with the word fighting because it had too many negative connotations. I've learned not to put as many negative connotations on conflict, so conflict's positive. So why would I want to change, why would I soften it to tension?
Well, I'm just wondering, everybody comes, with their own filter,
baggage, yes.
And having done so many years of diversity, listening to people in the circle talk about their pain.
Right.
When somebody talks about conflict, it could be a battered woman.
Yes.
Versus me, who's not had that experience, it could be more discussional differences. So if I'm going to come into the session with my own filter,
yes.
How do we interpret it? And it takes them to a higher level, I think.
I would say any of these words. Any context where there's even low-level hostility. And how do I know there's low-level hostility? Because the communication is broken down. That's the very first manifestation. We're not talking to each other anymore, or we're talking in very terse, limited ways that's not communicating what's necessary to accomplish the mission.
So it's the behavioral response
Yes.
rather than the word.
I would. Yeah. So frustration, you come to work, you don't want to be there. Or there's huge dread going there. Or you're going home at night, raging with your family because there's no place else to vent this. Any of these, arguing in the workplace, feeling you're hurt, and you come and you carry that day in and day out. You're not talking about it, but you still feel the hurt. The other way to talk about it, I would think that most organizations would clearly understand, is the lost revenue based on productivity. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard the mantra, we don't have to get along, we just have to work together. Yeah, I mean, what a minimalist way of accomplishing a mission. I mean, if we really believed in that mission, why would we settle for, we don't have to get, we don't have to, be pals and buds and go out at night, but just to barely talk to each other? There's so many ways in which we can take the conflict and literally, or tension, or the frustration, and literally turn it to something that produces increased awareness, increased cooperation, increased friendship. Creativity, yes, that's a very positive result.
Definitely for creativity. And one of the things that we talked about was the agile team, or using an agile method, or not agile, excuse me, high functioning.
High performance
high
organization?
Yeah. So they have, the matrix team set up. So they're in a functional team and they're in a project team. So, and being able to deal with that conflict, I'm in two different teams going two different ways, and, there's another conflict. So if you can build that creativity and you have a way to manage those problems better, faster, easier, you make yourself better for both teams instead of, because of this conflict, you're lessening what you can give to both teams.
Rick, do you think at this point is where you're really building the case for having the managing the skills of conflict?
Not at this point. At this point, the pivot is I'm still trying to get people to rethink about how conflict. Most of them try desperately to keep it out of their lives. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to want them to be inviting it into their lives. Every day, show up. Hey, where's my conflict today? Bring it on. I'm ready. Come on, let's have. I want these things in my life. You're telling me I have to step into conflict to have that? We don't have these things because we show up at work every day. Oh, I don't want to talk to that person. Oh, I don't want to deal with that issue. Oh, don't bring that to me. And yet we're pushing out of our lives the very things we want. Now think about relationships personally. Everybody on the planet, I think, in a personal relationship wants an increased connection, an increased intimacy. And yet measure the success of the relationship by how many fights we don't have. I haven't had an argument with her in years. Well, how's the relationship going? It's kind of flattened out, right?
There's I forgot who said this expression, is that indifference,
Elie Wiesel.
is more difficult than difference.
Yes.
Indifference.
In fact, we got a slide, we're going to quote him. Yes. And I quote him in the book as well, Elie Wiesel, yes. Now think about this. We know from a team building point of view that there is a natural and inevitable process, norming, storming, forming, and yet we try desperately to measure the success of the team with the absence of storming. If we already know that you can't have forming without the storming, then let's figure out a way. Let's invite the storming into the team. And now, Rudy, as you're thinking already, I'm betting in the back of your head, we're right into 5 dysfunctions of a team. The very second level that has to be there if you're ever going to create that productivity is you got to eliminate the fear of conflict. One of the second dysfunctions is the fear of conflict. That's what we're talking about. Let's not be afraid. Let's approach it with some skills. It's like an interview. You go through an interview, it's painful, but with certain skills, it can be productive. Same thing. I'm not going to guarantee that the positive potential inside every conflict, you're going to pull it out every time. But the more you practice it, the better it's going to be. I'm not even going to promise you that it's not going to hurt. You know, conflict hurts a lot of the time. But if it's going to hurt anyways, let's at least try and pull out all the positive that's potentially there. That's what we're going to be able to do. Causes of conflict. Miscommunication, misunderstanding. 2 top causes of conflict, right? We've all heard that. We all know that. Ineffective management styles. Number 1 reason I own my own company. I got tired of working with people that had no skills and had control or effect over my life. And it's time to, you know, look, I can ruin my own life. I don't need you to ruin it for me. I'll go ahead and do it. Right?
How'd that work out for
Yeah, so far, much better. Right? As of today, much better. Unclear roles and expectations create conflict. And at this point, you know, how many people have kids? How many times you told that kid to clean your room? Their definition of clean was never my definition. Dad, it's clean. No, honey, shoving it under the bed, hiding it in the closet. That's not. You know. Yeah, there you go. Same thing. Yes, exactly. Lack of quality or competence. I hire you to do a job, you don't do it, you expect to get paid. Well, I'm not going to pay you for that job, right? That creates conflict. Standing on principle will cause conflict. Well, it's the principle of the thing. Yeah, well, principle's expensive. You know, if you want to fight for that, can you back it up for the expense? And here are the 2 big ones as well. These are the 2 big ones, but these 2 as well. Lack of resources and lack of security. And right now in our culture, with the lack of resources and the economy the way it is right now, what's the number 1 thing couples fight about?
Money.
Right? We're talking about lack of resources. With the economy the way it is, people getting laid off, unemployment rate, I mean, we're getting the statistics at about 8 point something, but, you know, those are probably conservative. You know, the fear that we've got double-digit unemployment, then the question is, well, what about my job? Am I going to get laid off? Just on the news this morning, heard about state employees whose benefit packages have all been cut. And they're going to keep having this conversation. We're going to cut your benefits. We're going to cut your retirement. We're going to cut security. Insecurity goes up. Conflict goes up. You're going to have this at the home. You're going to have this at the workplace. Are we ready to deal with these conflicts? And if we know that those positive things are available, do we have the skills to nurture that seed of positive potential? That's what we're trying to talk about. That's what we're looking at for here today. The depth of conflict. We all know it comes with an issue. People bring issues to the table that become the catalyst of a conflict. You know, you hurt my feelings. But we also know that the issues are just on the surface. Below that surface, a whole lot of other things that's contributing to this conflict, fueling this fire. It can be a number of different things. Differences in personalities, differences in emotional intelligence brought to that table, a whole, you know, another skill set. Differences in needs, desires, interests that both parties bring, working from very different perspectives. I think I know you and what you would be reacting to as a normal human being. Suddenly now I'm not so sure. Perceptions of myself or my own self-esteem issues feed all of this. Unresolved issues from the past. But here's the danger. You look at this list and you think, oh my gosh, you have to have a degree in psychology in order to resolve conflicts. No, you don't. It's not a psychology degree. We don't have to drill all the way down into these unresolved issues in the past between your mom, your dad, or your other siblings. That's counseling. You can plenty of resources for doing that. Good conflict managers can deal with these issues, understanding that there are things going on, but what we need is an understanding of how conflict works. So many of the techniques I see that are applied misunderstand how conflict works, ends up introducing a technique that literally ends up rubbing against the grain of conflict, making it worse, stalling the situation, or incinerating this, escalating it so that those negative things just keep coming out. no access to the positive. We need to understand how conflict works, not necessarily how the human psyche works, and then bring to it techniques and skills that work with it for resolving it. Impact. Conflict has the ability to stall. I've seen it stall organizations. I've seen it stall teams. I've seen relationships stall. They just stagger and they go flat and they drag out on this plateau for years and years and years and lose energy. That entropy starts to take over. I heard someone say one time, you're either green and growing, I think personally and professionally, or you're ripe and rotting. There are only two options. You can't stay still. You can't find that plateau, seize it, and stay there. So where are we? Are we growing or are we rotting? Anytime you hit that plateau, you need to do something to catalyze. Conflict will move you out of that plateau. Offer those positive things for you. I've seen communication stall. Oh my gosh. How many different places do we see communication stalling? Internationally, politically, yes. Politically, personally, right? Departments not talking to each other, right? In organizations. In growth, individual growth. Well, organization, I did a consulting contract for a big architecture firm here in Atlanta. And the reason I got called in was there was conflict. Conflict amongst the managing partners. And needed some guidance on what to do. And they had stalled. And they wouldn't deal with the elephant in the room. And so after about a couple of year process of working through what needed to be done to accomplish addressing this elephant, they began to see growth again. But it wasn't until they were able to bring something, some tools, some techniques, some skill to this conflict were they able to cross that threshold of new growth. Yes?
In my consulting, one of the key areas of doing executive coaching is around the inability to handle conflict.
Absolutely.
And it's a derailer.
Oh.
It's a derailer for them to become, the senior executive that they are,
That next step.
Pipeline.
Yes.
Yeah. It completely derails them.
Yep. Stalls. They can't move forward.
Stall piece.
Yep.
Absolutely. I think that's so right on target.
Yes, and there's a story from your experience there that you pull in at this point. Yes. Now, growth also on the individual level. We all know people, someone who is an adult. At least they have an adult body, but inside beats the heart of a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old. Something happened in their life at that moment in time that stalled them. A conflict that they either didn't have the power nor the skills to address, and they're stuck. Now, that's the bad news. I mean, we got this 40-year-old who developed...
My last chief.
You're like, ooh. Yeah, we all know somebody like this, right? In some cases, my therapist was here. No. Right? Inside that heartbeat where they're stuck, that's the bad news. Here's the good news. Life is about our abundance. It's constantly trying to give us more life, each of those opportunities. And what it does is it recreates that event that had us stuck, assuming that at some point in time in our life, we will have the skills. We will have the power to get over it, to get past it, to move through it onto that next level of life. Okay? Unfortunately, most of us are asleep. Life gives us that opportunity, repeats that event for us, and we don't recognize it. We approach it, it happens, we skip it, no skills brought to it, boom, stay stuck. Well, that's okay. Life will bring another one along. Same thing over and over again. Life will continue to do that till the day we die, giving us that possibility over and over and over again, assuming we either have the power or the skills to address it. That opportunity always happens. It will always be there. We just don't recognize it each time. Now, here's the good news. Yes, Groundhog Day. Bill Murray, yeah, that's an excellent illustration of that same thing, repeating it over and over and over again. Now, and that repeating can come in different forms. Oftentimes, a second marriage becomes that second opportunity, yes, where, ooh, I just brought my same baggage with me to another relationship, and it's no wonder the second one didn't work either, right? What's the common denominator in all these? Right? Or I heard the story of a guy who had 12 jobs in 12 months, and he was complaining about the economy and complaining about, all the different corporations. And somebody finally asked him, well, what's the common denominator between all these jobs? Right? It's you. Right? So each time it could be a boss, a chief, that life is brought into, because you don't get to pick your chiefs, right? Bingo, there it is. Here's an opportunity again. Were we awake? Did we recognize it? Did we bring those skills to it? It could be a child that life's brought into your life at that moment. And as that child gets older, it brings up those issues for you. Oop, here's that opportunity. Here's what I know, the good news. Everybody in this room has the power. There's no question. You couldn't be at the stage you are in life right now and not have the power. The only question is, do you have the skills? So that when life brings that opportunity again, you have half the formula. Will you recognize it, and will you have the skills to work through it to that next level? Because conflict also has the power to reveal. It can reveal in an organization a problem that has not been solved, right? Something that hasn't been dealt with. It will come up again. So many times we neglect to address what's really going on. It goes underground and resurfaces later in even a more insidious way. So conflict can be that revealer to us that we need to readdress this yet again. It's always an opportunity. In every single conflict, there is that opportunity of nurturing that positive potential that is always there. I don't care what the conflict is, how intense it might be. That opportunity is always there. And in our case, right now in our culture, the paradigm shift. We are in the midst of a huge paradigm shift, politically, economically, globally. And we can see the conflicts that are arising out of all of those things, the opportunities we have right now for us with the power and the skills to create much more life, much more quality of life than we have now for the next generation. And if we teach that next generation some of these skills, they'll be able to go farther and further than we did. So managing change. Conflict is simply, and this is that pivot point, Maureen, you're talking about dealing with it. Conflict is fundamentally a request for communication. That's all it is. Why are we so afraid of a request for communication? It always amazes me, someone will walk all the way across the workplace floor, come to my desk and say, I'm not talking to you. I mean, what is that except a request for communication? What do they want from me? Oh, wait, what did I do? Hey, wait, don't. They want me to chase them down and find out what I did wrong. Why are you mad? See. Or one of my favorites is show up first thing in the morning. I walk by Rudy's cubicle, right? He's sitting in there. I go, good morning, Rudy. And he doesn't say anything back. Stop, step back, stick my head in the cubicle. Good morning, Rudy. Rudy does one of these. What's the next words Rudy wants to hear out of my mouth?
What's wrong?
What's wrong? And I'll tell you what's wrong, right? There it is. It's that request for communication. Now here's what's fascinating. Human beings are brilliant. Rudy communicated to me that he wanted to talk to me by not talking to me. You notice how that works? Right? That whole silent treatment is, there's a beautiful commercial. I don't remember what phone package it is. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, she calls her boyfriends up to tell him she's giving him the silent treatment. Yeah. And he goes, I'm not sure you understand what that means. And then, hello? Hello? She's just sitting on the Yeah, it's a request for communication. That's all it is. Wow, we should get that clip. So that's just exactly what we're talking about, right? Well, here's what you need to know about that request. Conflict in that request for communication. Strong antagonistic emotions, responses, connections are evidence of either a valued issue or a valued relationship. Now, let me break this down a little bit. What I like to do with the audience is pick somebody at this point and ask them, like Maureen, can I interest you in a debate as to whether a 1966 Mustang should have a 2-barrel or a 4-barrel carburetor?
I have no idea how to discuss that with you.
See?
How could you possibly be a conflict?
There you go. See, the issue I picked, you have very little energy for, right?
Right.
You're not interested in engaging in this conflict. You don't have an opinion one way or the other. It's not a valued issue. I'll give you another example personally. When my youngest daughter was 16 years old, her mother and I and her argued over her curfew. They thought her curfew at 16 should be 11 p.m. Okay, I thought her curfew should be 25 years old. Not let her go out at all until she's 25 years old. Right. See? Now, we had this conflict, right? This argument, this debate, discussion, if you will, because we both valued the same thing, her mother and I. What were we valuing? Her safety. And we just came at it from different points of view. I saw her safety as, let's keep her in the house. They saw her safety as, okay, 11, no later. You know, let's move it from 10 to 11. We both agreed on what we valued. We had an argument as to how to manifest that value. Valued issues and relationship create the conflict. So at this point, I sometimes give people what I call a homework assignment. Tonight, what I want you to do, especially if I'm going to see them the next day, I want you to go home, find somebody who says they love you, and pick a fight with them. If you cannot engage that person in an argument or debate or discussion, whatever you want to call it, you've either picked an issue they care nothing about, or you're in a relationship they care nothing about. Okay? Now, I do that tongue-in-cheek. I don't really give them the homework assignment. But it makes the point, if you don't have fights, if there are no arguments, then you are not tripping over things that you each value. Which brings us to the point of conflict management secret number 1. That's people only fight about things they care about. So as soon as I get called in to a conflict, when a corporation hires me or a divorcing couple hire me, they're fighting over things they care about. That's the good news. My first good moment. I know these people are in an argument, are in a fight because they value something. My job is to figure out what it is they value. Now, they may value 2 different things. The illustration with my daughter, we valued the same thing and came to different approaches. Conflict can also come from valuing different things and then having a different approach to it as well. My job as a conflict manager is to figure it out. If you come home at night and your spouse is standing in that hallway with their arms folded and they're tapping their foot and they got their knitted eyebrows, you know that your spouse wants to talk. Right? You're about to have a conversation. But if you, yeah, whether you're ready or not, power or skills, I don't know. Let's step into it. But if you come home and the garage is empty, all the furniture is gone, and your closets are empty,
Big clue.
she did not want to talk. So, what's the difference between, what's the opposite of love? It's not hate. It's indifference. And this is what Elie Wiesel, yes. This is what Elie Wiesel, one of his learning points from the Holocaust. He said, it's not hate you want to be afraid of. It's indifference. It's the bystanders that cause just as much problem. You got a limited number of bullies, but if you got enough people silent about it, indifferent, you got a crisis on your hands. You got a disaster on your hands. So hate is an incredibly binding emotion, just like love. Love is an incredibly binding emotion. It's indifference you want to be afraid of. So I get called into an organization, and I've got half the room over here, management calls me in because these people are causing conflict, they're filing complaints, they're stuffing suggestions in the suggestion box anonymously, right? Things like that. This side of the room, and his employment staff, they don't fight, they don't argue, they show up to work at 8, they leave at 5. They're just, the model employee. And what the manager wants me to do is to make these people like these people, because his or her life would be so much easier, right? And I tell them, this could be done cheaply. Just keep doing what you're doing. These people will eventually turn into these people. These people have crossed that threshold of indifference. They don't care anymore. They don't have an opinion. They just show up, no initiative, do my job description, and go home. These people still care. Or they wouldn't be concerned, frustrated, angry, stuffing, filing over and over again. They still care about what's going on and the impact that it's having. I can't do anything with this side of the room. There is no energy. I can't direct it. This I can take and turn positively, this energy, in a productive direction. So when managers hire me and ask me for this, they don't know what they're asking for. Got to be careful. It's the energy over here, and that's what this says. Indifference cannot support the energy necessary for conflict. Takes a lot of energy. Nobody steps into it, here we go, conflict management secret number 1, without caring. So I point this out in the book. Peace is not difficult. We can have peace on earth. We can accomplish that very easily. All we have to do is gather in one spot enough people who could care less. Because they're not going to fight. They're not going to argue. They're not going to debate. Now, is that the community I want to be a part of? No, it's not. If peace is possible and conflict is inevitable, storming, forming, right? Then they must be able to coexist at the same time. Peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the ability to produce that positive potential that's inside every single conflict if we bring the skills to it necessary to nurture that. So, what's the difference between these three? We've talked about power, we've talked about skill. What's the difference between power, authority, and control? Because they're often confused, often used synonymously. What do you think? Any ideas?
Okay, power is the ability to do something.
Okay.
There's several different powers. Authority is being granted. Well, I wouldn't say maybe granted is the wrong word, but you're provided an opportunity to have direction over other people, and then control is being able to handle yourself within the situation.
Okay. Anybody else? Add, subtract, multiply that?
Power means the reserve energy, the potential to do.
Oh, good. Yeah. Excellent.
Authority is the overall wherewithal to decide. And control is a melding of the first two.
Ah, very good. Maureen, any thoughts? Add, subtract?
I don't know if I could do any better than those two in that explanation. I see power, if misused, the tipping point can be negative, but it also can be positive.
Yes.
And if it's done within balance. Authority is sort of the empowerment of my job, the scope of responsibility. I handle that. I do it because I know what I can do and where the boundaries are.
Mm-hmm.
Control would be, again, I think all of these, they have tipping points and has to be in balance. Control would be, I have to either, I think it's probably the one that causes the most problems in conflict is the need for control. of the
Absolutely.
situation
Yes.
Or the relationship.
Yep. So at this point with this slide, I've posed this question. You can generate conversation. Sometimes the answers will be way too similar. Okay, well that sounds an awful like authority. What's the difference between? And we get them thinking about these three things because they are often confused, and this is a huge catalyst for conflict, and that's where we're headed next on this, which is conflict management secret number 2. So this is an opportunity. I'm not really pressing for a right answer. I've had my thoughts on it, and here's some of the things I've come up with, and that is everyone has power. It's impossible not to have power. Even dead people have power. You don't even have to be alive to have power, right? And if you want an illustration, just think of your grandmother. She's still here. She's still here, right? You're still making decisions based upon her influence in some way, right? Stuff like that. Or think of great figures in our history that still influence. Martin Luther King Jr., of course, people like that. You don't have to be alive to have power. Everyone has it. If nothing else, you have nuisance power, which can be huge leverage in any organization. A 2-year-old is probably one of the most powerful creatures on the planet, right? So I looked at power as just the ability to move yourself or to affect another. So I like that, potential to do, right? And the impact that it can have can be positively or negatively the effect. But you move yourself, and that can be positively or negative. So that's the way I thought about power. And then the difference with authority, I actually went to the word, granted. Authority is only granted or given. No one's born with authority. It has to be bestowed, which means, or given. And what that means is some people will take authority, but you don't have to give them authority, right? So oftentimes people will give up or give authority to somebody else and simply do what they said. There's no reason necessarily to. But why did you give that? Mother-in-laws can have authority. Why? Because I gave it to her, right? And those kinds of things. So it's either granted or given, and it's that responsibility. I think you all alluded to that, where the buck stops with you. You have the authority. You make decisions around the management of a project or a budget, and the buck stops there. So that's what I think about with authority. Where it gets confusing is a lot of people assume that authority grants control. Here's what I thought about control. The ability to make someone think, feel, or do something. That's control. So control and authority are often confused. A manager can come to my desk. I've got a soccer game tonight. It's a tournament with my daughter, and I've promised her I'll be there. I've missed so many so far. And my boss lines up in front of my desk at 4:45 and says, you need to, and then we can come up with a military illustration. Stands there and says, I need you to. Well, this is before you leave, and this is going to take, 5:30, 6 o'clock to get this done. I'm going to miss that.
They probably knew about it since 1 o'clock.
And didn't say anything, right? Here, Now, do they have the authority to ask for this? Yes. Do I have to do it?
No.
That's the difference between authority and control. And here's where most people get confused. Well, if I don't do it, I'll lose my... Well, that's right. It doesn't mean you don't have a choice. You always have a choice, and the choice may suck. But it is always your choice. Here's the backhand of what we're talking about. Control, my conflict management secret number 2. You can only control 2 things. Yourself and your attitude. You cannot control anything else. You can't make anybody think, feel, or do anything at all. Now here's the backhand. No one can make you do anything. It is always your choice. You may not like the consequence. You may not like the choice. But it is your choice. Do they have the authority to fire you? Yes, they do. Can they make you do it? No. Okay? And yet how many conflicts are we end up in thinking that we can make this other person do something, make this other person stop doing something, or make them think something, that we can have control over them. Mike first.
One of the things that I like that you make in those points in the book is that you say, you know, you can only control two things, yourself and your attitude. If you try to control anything else, you're the one out of control.
Yes, that's the byproduct of this. If you're standing there trying to make someone do something, you're the one out of control, not the other person. So I'm sitting here all mad at my boss for putting me in this circumstance and situation, and now I'm trying to control them, change their mind, talk them out of it. Really, all I have to do is make a choice. I have a choice to make. I don't like it. I'm not happy about it, but it is my choice. Maureen, you had a...
My question just, would we approach this differently, military control with around freedom to choose and behave versus corporate?
Here's the
Consequences are different.
Here's the distinction. I'm about to give you a military illustration of this, but here's the distinction we want to continually communicate in the military section. We are not talking about the command structure.
Okay.
We are not talking about that. Does that commander have control over you? No, you still get to choose. I mean, it's always your choice. But we are not advocating that they question their command structure. You want to clarify that even more?
The whole thing is you do have a choice, and that's one thing the military says. Like those guys that went out and followed orders that were illegal, they had the choice not to follow those orders. There were going to be consequences. They could have been court-martialed. At the court-martial, they could have been exonerated and said, no, you made the right choice in not following those orders because it was an illegal order. Or they could be court-martialed because they followed that order. So they have a choice. That choice is their power. So in the military, we are already taught you have that choice. Now there are times that you are trained not to question. There are, you know.
In circumstances where there's this is not the time or the place to question.
Right. You know, your choice is already made. You're trained. You know. So that's where the main difference is. We've already been trained and understand that there is a time that we have the resource,
Prerogative.
the prerogative to take that extra few moments to consider it. And then there is the time when there is gunfire or anything else going on, this situation, there's a fire, and our choice is already made because we know what our duty is. And we know instantly what our choice is going to be. We train for it. And that's what training is for.
So every time we've taught this in a military context, this question has come up. Same thing. We are not addressing command structure. That is not what we're talking about here. And once you say that, it falls into place, I think. Right? That's okay. You're looking at me like I need to say something more.
No.
Okay, good. That's it. But other than that, I'll give you an example. I was doing training for Navy intelligence. Yes, I know. Up in Bethesda. And it was a leadership training, 3 days. And 25 contract employees, civilian employees, the commanding officer, very impressive, imposing. I usually don't like to have the supervisor in the training because it tends to thwart the
Shuts them down.
right. This case, not at all. These folks respected this man. It was impressive leadership that he had. Day one, we're going over this, right? Going through the whole day. The next day he comes to me and says, I was up last night thinking about this, which was impressed the hell out of me. Wow, you actually thought about this going home? Wow, that's amazing. But he says, I disagree. I can control these people. He said, I can make any one of them drop and give me 20. I said, okay, fine. Let me ask you a couple of questions. If they don't drop and give you 20, would there be consequences? Yes, there would be consequences. Could those consequences be severe? Oh, yes, they could be very severe. I turned to him and said, what if they chose the consequence? Could you make them drop and give you 20? No, I could not. It is always that person's choice. Some of our leaders out there that have authority start to confuse and think they have control. Just because these people choose to follow you Doesn't mean you control them.
Another great example of this is there are laws that are supposed to control our behavior. But how many days or how many seconds does pass without somebody breaking a law? The speed limit, you know,
Red light.
red lights, tailgating. You know, and those control mechanisms are already there. And there is consequences for them. And people choose to break it. Sorry.
My choice. We were teaching my girls how to driving, and it was like, you know, there are times when you need to speed. There are times you need to run a red light. There will be times you'll choose to speed. But when that cop pulls you over, don't get mad at him or her. It was your choice. You're mad because you got caught. It was your choice. So that officer has the authority to write you a ticket. You had the choice to drive over the speed limit.
And the point, I mean, because my orientation is mostly corporate, even though I've had military, a couple years in military, is that people will vote, make the choice, and vote with their feet.
Yes.
You know, I don't like what you're saying to me, I don't like the way you talk to me,
Mhm.
I don't like the culture here. Goodbye, you know, I'll go, my resume's on the street, I pick up my skills, and I vote with my feet, and I go somewhere else. You don't do that in the military.
No.
So there is maybe a different process of how.
Not so readily.
Not so
Well,
readily.
no, you do have that choice. You can vote that way with the military, but you can also face an execution squad, which hasn't
Okay.
been used.
Well, but,
Yeah.
but
And you can
less severe than that.
Yeah.
My nephew was a Marine, and he didn't like California. Hated it. So whenever he was sent to training in California, he would try to lobby to be assigned someplace. That for him was more attractive than California. That was perhaps less attractive to other folks. So when the assignment came to go, he was the first one to raise his hand. I'll send me now. I'll go to Asia. I just don't like California. So in that case, he could vote
Oh,
by
yeah.
leaving the assignment of being reassigned someplace.
And the other one is, that's why we have UA, which is unauthorized absence, and AWOL, absent without leave. Because people chose to vote with their feet.
But those were pretty severe.
Yes,
I mean,
the
you think twice.
Consequences, right.
You think twice as hard in the military than you'd maybe in corporate, because the
And the-
consequence is a different level.
And the point we're making is it's always your choice. And if you don't like the circumstance you're in, you're choosing to stay or not.
For your time. Just do it for your time.
Yes.
Until you can get something.
It's always your choice. And this is an empowerment piece where a lot of people can think, well, I don't have any control. Yes, you're the only one who has the control. Nobody else can control. They can't make you stay here. They can't make you follow orders. You're choosing. And therefore take responsibility for those choices. Yes?
Address generational differences.
Yeah, the whole value, what I choose and why I choose it is often fed by those core values of, so a Gen Xer will make decisions based upon those core values, such as my family life. I am not going to stay after and miss my daughter's soccer practice. You can take this report and find it somewhere else, or you can, suffer the consequences of not having them done. I'm not doing it. And that's an easy choice for them. Where a baby boomer is going to think much more in lines of, well, this is for the team. I'm going to take one for the team. I'm showing this cooperation. We're working together. I'm willing to make personal sacrifices for that value. They're both making sacrifices for value. It's different value sets that's really feeding those decisions.
We're getting to the point where there are more Gen Xers in the workplace.
Definitely. By 2020, we're going to have a Gen X world. All leadership positions will be filled by a Gen Xer. Well, all. Yes, a huge shift in paradigm. And right now, 2012 is 50-50. Gen X, and so there's the potential for conflict just on that alone is huge, and I see it. The value system, I hear the baby boomers complaining about the Gen Xers, they're so self-centered, because the boomers are thinking about this team, we need to sacrifice, work together. Gen Xers don't think like that. They're much more individualistic. They're an army of one. That was the advertisement, army of one. That was directly addressing the Gen X value system. Army of one. Whereas, you know, Coca-Cola, I'd like to teach the word, right? We were all in it together.
In step.
Yeah. Yeah, arm in arm, yes. So this becomes the second point. So much of what we do from here on out in terms of the leadership training, so much of it comes out of the consequence, the logical progression of this conflict management secret. Most of the time when I do this, folks really stop and think about this one. Wow, I hadn't thought of my life this way. It's always someone else who's responsible for me, and I have to answer to. And they don't really think about this themselves. So, and again, if you try and control that other person, you're the one out of control. We have a leadership portion called Boundaries and Self-Determination. And it is about how to relate to others on a team where we can not control them, but still create that productivity. Where does that line cross where I'm violating boundaries now? So that's the leadership portion. At this point in time, this is the last slide, and it's one on the 5 communication techniques that I've talked about. Now, what I sometimes do is take a break at this point because we're usually into this 45 minutes to an hour. It's the first thing. We've had some good discussion. Take a break. I take that opportunity and then come back and address this. This will take, could take as much as 30 minutes to get through, and the exercise is on this piece. So you can take a break or not take a break at this juncture. It's a natural break here if you wanted to take it. For the sake of filming, I'm going to keep going and let you suffer a little bit longer.
Well, we also won't be going through the,
we're not doing the exercise.
the
Yeah.
exercise, so it'll be shorter in that aspect.
Right. So here we go. There are 5 communication techniques that I bring to any conflict. Now, others as well, but these are the basics as necessary. And this is where I start to communicate to folks the value of communication skills. The value of communication skills in any conflict is to keep the door of communication open. Because that door in any conflict is spring-loaded to slam shut. The default mode is for that to close and end this. And it sounds or looks something like that. Well, if that's the way you're going to be, screw you, and walk away. Communication's broken, severed, it's ended. If we're ever going to resolve this conflict at that point of closure, there has to be some process or skill that comes back and says, remember yesterday when I was really in some way to pry that door back open. All those are communication skills. By using these techniques in the middle of this conflict, this discussion, debate, the tension, whatever you want to call it, my job is to prevent this spring from slamming this door shut. The reason communication skills are important is you cannot resolve a conflict with someone you're not talking to. We have to keep the door open. If it's already closed, we have to find a way to pry the door open and keep it open. However, communication skills do not resolve conflicts. This is where people, and this confusion drives me nuts. People tend to think that, well, the only way to resolve the conflict is to be moving my mouth. And therefore, it must be communication skills. No, just because your mouth is moving doesn't mean you're employing communication skills. There are 2 other skills you need, negotiation skills and resolution skills. And we're going to talk about resolution skills later in the next 2 modules. But right now, to keep the door open, these 5 techniques I use, and they work very effectively for me. 4 of them you already know. 4 of them are Communication Skills 101. And I'm going to go through these 4 very, very quickly, assuming you already understand these and practice them on a rudimentary level already. So I don't need to insult you or waste your time by going through Communication Skills 101. But just that we're all on the same page, Use reflective listening. This is the two techniques typical for this is summary skills and paraphrasing skills. Okay, we know how to do that. What's the difference between summary and paraphrase? That's okay.
One, you simply put into other words shorter terms what the other person is saying.
Yes. Now, which is that? The summary or the paraphrasing?
Okay, the summary, you just summarize what they said, you reduce it.
Uh-huh.
And then paraphrase, you simply restate and rephrase it.
Restate it a different way. And oftentimes that's useful if we get the chance to pull out any kind of toxic language or pull out that negative, that harmful stuff. Still say the same thing, but without not all that knife jabbing and poking. So yes, summary. Yes, yes, excellent. Explore their understanding. This is probably the most used, and typically it's just the technique is ask probing questions. That's all I'm trying to do. Now, here's the danger. There's a tripwire here. It's what I call the understanding trap. In the second book I'm writing, that's one of the chapters, how to stay out of the understanding trap. If we're not careful, we ask probing questions to figure out their understanding, how they see the situation, so that we can now correct them. That only exasperates the problem. Your job in keeping this door open, if I start trying to fix your understanding, if I try to change your mind or change your thinking to any degree, then I am headed for this door of communication to be stuck, closed. So it's like, so you thought, now I see. The problem is you misunderstand what I really did or what I really said, or my experience is that creates more conflict rather than solve it. And it's based on this fundamental false assumption that understanding, mutual understanding, resolves conflicts. Now here's the difference, because sometimes that works. You can come to me and be frustrated about something, and then I can explain what happened, and you go, oh, all right, I didn't know that. Well, now that I know that, that makes sense. Well, we've suddenly reached mutual understanding. Let me show you the difference between the understanding trap and that little moment of clarity. It has everything to do with which direction the energy is going in. If I offer an explanation, nothing wrong with offering an explanation, and you decide, oh, that's a piece I didn't have, okay, I'm going to let it go. We've now reached a mutual understanding. But if I'm sitting here trying to change your understanding, then I am, no, you misunderstood. That's wrong. You don't have the facts right, and you hold on to your understanding, but I keep trying to change it. That's the trap. As soon as you let go, we've reached mutual understanding. I can't make you change your mind. The more I try, the more this escalates. So there's a tripwire of danger here if you're not careful that actually fuels the conflict rather than resolves it. Ask probing questions. My goal is simply to keep you talking. I need you to stay put, to stay in the room, to keep talking to me to where we can get to the point of resolution. So I ask probing, so you thought, oh wow, I had no idea that would be interpreted that way. You know, now that you say that, how long have you thought? And I keep asking these, did anybody else see it that way? Gee whiz, what did you do after you found out? You went and posted it on the internet. Oh, wow. Have you gotten any response? Right. It's viral now. Exactly. Go ahead. Just keeping the door open. That's all I'm trying to do.
So really the point we might want to make is that the probing is really around clarification of what has been said by them rather than placing judgment.
Yes.
To maneuver their thinking.
I'm trying desperately to figure out how you see this situation. And the more clarity I can get around that, I can use it in the resolution stage. If I try to use that clarity against you, then we just exasperate it. I'll show you how to do that in this next presentation, not to drop into that. So yes, ask probing questions. Be very careful about. Here's what happens. If you start to use your understanding now, and this communication technique toward resolution, it has a tendency to slam that door shut. Oh, that's the way you see the situation. Well, let me clarify. Let me clarify your misunderstanding. Let me fix your thinking. That tends to close that door shut. A perfect example, somebody comes to my office, and it's a corporate example. You know, Rick, you're a terrible manager. You've really screwed up that project. You know, you're the worst manager we've ever had. So you don't like my management style. Oh, well, that's exactly right. So what I understand, you're frustrated with me as a leader. Yes, I understand. Well, I can fix that. You're fired. See, I've taken your understanding and clarified it, and then, boom, you're gone.
Placing judgment is the issue.
Yes, no judgment. Yeah, problem solved. Yes. Yeah, there's a whole piece I can go into later. There's a whole lot of more depth to it than I necessarily go in with my group here about what's the role of a fact. Facts are always judgment-based. And what's the purpose of a judgment? And we'll talk a little bit about that next time if we want. We can go into more depth for this purposes. But yes, that's that judgment piece. What we don't do in conflict resolution, you don't need judgments in conflict resolution. Talk about that difference in just a minute. Okay, the third one, really easy. You guys do this, recognize feelings and emotions. Somebody comes in, wow, I can see you're really upset. I can see this is really bothering. I had no idea you felt this way. And I can reflect back those feelings or those emotions that they're talking about. You bet I'm pissed off. I mean, who wouldn't be? Anybody in their right? It gives them a chance again to talk. They're talking points at this point. So I can keep that door open. I need them to continue talking. Again, that door is spring-loaded shut. The next one, find things to validate. Now, just because you validate it doesn't mean you agree with it. Somebody can come into my office all upset and frustrated. I want to thank you for coming to me with this. Because if they're not coming to me with this, who are they going to? I mean, now it's rumors, and I don't even get a chance to address it before half the company knows who it is or what's going on. So things to validate, right? I hadn't thought of it that way, but now that you mention it, wow. From that point of view, I could see how you came to that conclusion. Or, had that happened to me and I looked at it that way, I think I'd be pissed too. Doesn't mean you agree with their solution or their expectations, but you can find something to validate. Thank them for, if they've taken the energy to come to your office, the first thing you know is they care about something. They either care about the issue they've brought to your table, which the issue is mission-oriented, which means you need to be thankful that they care, or they care about the relationship they have with you, which means you need to be thankful that they care. So there's always something to thank them for. Any questions about these four before we move on? Like I said, I don't want to insult you. You do these already. You know these exist. It's just a matter of applying them in this situation. Questions? All right, I want to talk about the fifth one. The fifth one, my experience, I've noticed fewer people know about this one and employ it. It takes a little more practice, but once you do it, this will change all of your communication on any level, personal or professional, once you master this one. It's called identifying the positive request. Now, if you'll notice, the positive is put in quotation marks because I'm making a distinction here between a positive perspective. This is not about taking a positive point of view or having a positive perspective. This is about finding that positive request. So the difference, let me give you an example of positive perspective. I had gone to lunch with a colleague of mine. We were standing at the counter ordering fast food. And to create conversation, the man at the register last summer, it was about the gas prices. And he says, oh my God, can you believe the gas prices, how bad they are? My colleague didn't miss a beat. He right instantly said, yeah, but the traffic's so much better now. That's putting a positive spin on a negative situation. That's a perspective skill. That is not what I'm talking about. We're not asking people to be positive or find the silver lining in the cloud. That's not what we're talking about. Positive request works this way, and it works every time this way because of how criticism works. Inside every single criticism is a positive request. Your job is to find that positive request inside that criticism. I don't care what the criticism is. I don't care who's delivering it. You could be delivering the criticism. There is a positive request embedded. So you cannot give or get a criticism without also getting that positive request. Your job is to find that positive request in the midst of the criticism. Let me give you a classic example. In just about every training I ever do, someone in the room says a criticism like this: "Man, is it hot in here?" It's a criticism about the temperature, right? Kind of a slight criticism about me and putting, the room in comfortable order. But what's the positive request? What are they asking for positively?
They're asking for you to turn on the AC or open up a window.
Yeah.
Or bring some fans in.
Now notice, nobody ever says, can we cool this place off a little bit? Rarely does anybody ever say that. They say, "Well, is it hot in here?" Right? Inside every criticism, every time someone criticizes anything, there's something they're asking for. Every single time. Your job is to find out what it is they're asking for. What they're asking for is a positive thing. They've just cast it in negative language. So, one more example, workplace. Somebody could come in to my office and say, "Rick, you're the worst manager we've ever had." Obvious criticism. What could I say back to that person? That would, thank you for coming to my office. There's that. See, we did the validate. I want to thank you for coming and sharing that with me, right? And I can start then to weave these things together. But what would the positive, what could I say that could identify their positive request? "Rick, you're the worst manager we've ever had."
As it relates to what?
Everything. Now that's a good probing question, notice. Excellent probing question. I get a little more clarity. That's not the positive request. So we've got these two down.
Or could you be more specific about
We like
the
strong
situation?
management.
Excellent probing question. Yeah, excellent probing question. That's not the positive request, though.
Oh, it's not positive.
No, it's an excellent probing question. Could you give me an example? I'm trying to get understanding.
What was the, you're an imbecile?
You're the worst manager we've ever had.
Okay, so you like positive management. Or you like good management.
So you like good management. That would be a positive request, identifying it.
What would you like me to correct? or
And
change?
now, I'm glad you did that. That is, for the sake of this moment, incorrect.
Okay.
But I needed it. I needed you to say that. What you just did, say it again.
What behavior would you want me to change?
Would you want me to
Or
change?
stay effective?
That's probably a probing question. If you're not careful, it also becomes very close to a summary. Most people, new novices, when they're trying this skill out, end up summarizing rather than finding the positive request. So it goes something like this: "Rick, you're the worst manager we've ever had. So you don't like my management style." That is a summary of the criticism, or a paraphrase, whichever one you want to pick. So you don't like my management style. I'm literally summarizing what they've said about me back to them instead of finding the positive request. Here's the difference, and this is why I have to have this from the audience.
Shill.
Huh?
That was a good shill for that one.
Yes, yes. And you're going to want to, you'll get it. It comes every time. Almost everybody does this. It's a very natural reaction, so you won't have to probe long to get it. The only reason we got this so quickly from Mike is because he's done this before. He's been through this. But you're going to get that answer almost every time. Your first one was, "So can you tell me what you would like for me to change?" is another probing question. "So you don't like my management style" is a summary. And here's the difference between what Mike said and what the summary would do. The difference is, who's the subject of the sentence? What is the subject of the sentence when you give it back to them? If the subject still focuses on the criticized, "So what would you like for me to change?" I'm still focusing on, I'm the subject of it. What would you like for me to change? Got it? So we're still talking about me. What Mike did and what positive request does removes you, the criticized, out of the equation completely. So it sounds something like, Rick, you're the worst manager we've ever had. So you'd like to have a better manager. Who are we talking about now? The other person. So you would like to have a better manager. And here's what you'll almost always hear. Yes, I would. Now here's why this is such a powerful technique. With simply identifying the positive request, you now have them talking about the only thing they can control.
Repeat what it is that we're going to say.
So you would like a better manager.
You.
Yeah, you want to flip it to have them start making I statements.
See, the criticism is here's another way to think about this. A criticism is really about the person who's giving the criticism. Right?
Yes.
You're a terrible human being. I'm criticizing you. But I'm really telling you more about myself than I am about you. Okay? There's something going on with me that I'm upset that I've even come and done this to you, that I'm pointing this finger and I'm making these accusations about you. But I'm saying just as much about me as I am about, what do they say? Whenever I point a finger at you, there's four going back. That's what we're doing with positive request. What is it that you're wanting out of this? What is it that these four fingers are pointing back to? And a way to do that is identify that positive request. Rick, you're the worst manager we've ever had. So you would like a better manager. We're not talking about me at all now.
Would it be appropriate to say as an add-on to so you would like a better manager is what do you want out of this statement?
What do you want out of this statement?
Or what do you want out of this statement?
What would you like to see happen next?
Yeah, okay.
I mean, we're focusing on them. Now, if you say, what would you like to see happen next, that's a good probing question. You've combined these two together. What I would encourage you to do is make sure you've found the positive request, because the chances are you're not going to. So I kind of separate these two. I can always ask the next question. Now, here's the beauty of this technique. Remember, the purpose of communication skills is to keep this door open. That's the only goal. If I start to put resolution hopes on the backs of my communication skills, what I've seen happen over and over, I end up snapping the back of my communication skills. They can't carry the weight of resolution. What they do is they keep the door open so I can step across that threshold with the other skills that I have. So notice, even if I get it wrong, they're going to tell me I got it wrong. They're still talking. So you'd like to have a better manager. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. What is it you're looking? Now I'm up to a probing question. I can weave these things in and out. I can keep this person talking. I can actually, during the mediations, I can control just about anything that's being said or done. The flow and focus of the communication in that room, no matter how many people there are in that room, by using these 5 techniques. Keep the conversation going. Let's come up. Think of your last conflict. Remember, we started the morning. Think back. Can you remember a criticism that was given or that you gave? And if that's too close to home, think of any criticism you've ever heard, given, or received. Let's see if we can find the positive request.
What I brought up was we had the cable tech come in response to a picture stalling on TV.
Uh-huh.
So the cable guy came and he looked and he says, "Oh, you stuffed the cable under the baseboard, and that's causing the signal not to flow to it." The cable has been under that baseboard for a month. The TV's only been stalling for a week. What's the connection?
Yeah.
So it appears that he's laying the blame on the malperformance of the cable
Right.
on something we did.
Right.
So
And
we're
the-
the problem.
Yep.
The equipment's not failing, it's us.
So word the criticism for us, and let's see if we can find that positive request. What would he say that criticized?
He said, what he said is you stuffed the cable
Okay.
under the hardwood floor that you put in there.
Okay. You stuffed the cable under the hardwood floor. There's the criticism. What would be the positive request he's looking for?
You should not do things to impair the cable.
So you would like to not see the cable impaired in any way. That's a good one. What else? Another one?
So you want, oh, excuse me. So you want to see this cable in a different position?
All right, good one. Yep. Again, notice it's not being right or wrong. It's we gotta get a chance to. Yes.
Say, so you took it upon yourself, or so you as a cable expert believe whatever.
Hey,
This
go ahead.
cable being under the baseboards is the problem.
So you believe it's the baseboard that's causing the problem? Yeah. There's not really a request in there.
I was thinking about that. That's
Yeah.
really
Something he wants.
that's a more probing question.
Yeah.
So moving to the resolve would be really the alternatives to making the picture come back on the television.
Yeah, careful. You're moving too quickly because what I'm going to show you is the key to any resolution process is getting the request as quickly as possible. But if you grant the request, you're going to screw this up. The goal here in resolution is not to grant the request because 9 times out of 10, what they're asking for is not their need. So we don't want to just, and that's what every problem solver, we're excellent problem solvers, management will do this. They'll ask a question. In fact, Mike and I were doing this yesterday. It occurred to me, the combination that you gave to Stan with that, is it a number or is it a process or is it both? If we ask our questions in such a way, we're looking for an answer that will give us a solution. So if I could just pick the right question that could nail this solution, we're done, we're over with. Whereas more often than not, I'm asking a question to get an answer from you just to hear the answer. I'm nowhere near looking for a resolution yet. I'm still trying to triangulate the need from the very beginning.
So going back to what I said would be a more appropriate, or whatever's been said. So you would like to see this cable being placed somewhere else?
Yes.
So that's the positive request that they weren't able to say. They did the blame,
Right.
but you want to put it into a positive statement.
Yes, some sort of positive statement that doesn't have that blame. He's looking for something. And ultimately, what he's looking for is an easy fix. If I could just get this to go away, we pull this out, I get to go home. So it would really be easy to fix this if that was the problem, right? That's what he's asking for.
So you would like your customers not to, so you would like your customers not to change the dynamics of
Your setup. Yeah, and even if I was assuming that he set it up and I changed it, he could correct that. No, that's not what I'm saying. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. And whatever he says next, I can go right into a probing question to get him talking more. One of the hardest things I get from training, say, managers, particularly because they want to solve these things really quickly in some sort of sense, is the skill of asking the questions. That I'm literally asking a bunch of questions to get me to a starting point where most people want the questions to be the ending point. If you just answer it, we're done. No. And I was asking Stan to pick 2 things. Is it this one or this one? I'm nowhere near resolving. I just need to hear how he answered it. Which one did he pick? Why did he pick that one? That leads me to another question to get deeper into what's going on with Stan. See the difference? Most managers only want one golden question. So, I'll fire you. We're done. Okay? So positive request. Another criticism. Any other criticism? I did this for a class one time, for NIH, in fact. I said, any criticism you can think of for me. And somebody's, you're short. Oh, yeah. Okay, you don't have to hit hard, just, this, right? Or someone said, I can't believe you wore those pants. And suddenly I'm, what? I didn't realize how self-conscious it was actually going to make me. But, yes. So they tell me my pants are too short, all right? What's the positive request? Somebody points out a fashion faux pas to me. What does that tell me about them, right? So what would I come back with? Those pants are way too short.
So you like pants to go all the way down?
You like pants to go all the way down. What else? Good.
So you think I should choose another type of? No.
So what was the difference? So you think take me out of it? Yes.
Okay, take the eye out of it.
Yes.
So you prefer a longer pant look?
Well, longer pant look. Yep. You want to try?
Your fashion sense is different.
Excellent. Yes. So, wait, except don't put mine in there. Yeah. Just talk about their fashion sense.
So you don't like ankles?
So you don't like ankles? Yeah. See? Exactly. So you think ankles are sexy? Yeah? Ankles turn you on, right? No, that's not what I'm saying. It still keeps the thing open. Yeah. So you have a really strong fashion sense for presenters, right? Notice it's not me. It's just in general. So one of the illustrations in the book and for the exercise is this criticism. All politicians lie. What makes it difficult is you have to take the word politician out of it, but yet still capture the request without repeating the word politician. It's like politician's the subject. So I have to find a more generic class to talk about. So one way, like I said, it's not about being right or wrong, is you want leaders to tell the truth. So notice I've taken a wider class of leaders versus just politicians.
And then if they devil's advocate. No, that's not what I said, Rick. I said that politicians do that. I'm definitely criticizing, and I'm against politicians.
I'm against politicians. Well, tell me more about why you're so upset with politicians. What has happened recently? Or give me an example. See, we do this one very, very well. We do summary very, very well. Yeah, go ahead and use that as your next statement. Weave these together.
So going back to a probing question can kind of reboot you back into getting to the positive request?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. Now keep in mind, we're not headed for this. This is not the goal necessarily. There are many ways for me to get this request. I'll show you other ways to get this request. This is just one that criticism works this way. And oftentimes we don't know what to do with the criticism. This is simply a communication technique. How do I keep this conversation going? That's all it is. Don't expect anything else from it.
For me, this flashes to people not taking accountability or responsibility for their own thoughts, or judgments, or behaviors.
Yes.
It becomes your problem, not mine.
Yep.
And that's the accountability piece
Yeah.
that I get real frosted about.
Yeah. So it would really benefit you if someone else took on this responsibility. See, See, yeah, see.
So say that again.
So you were saying people who don't take responsibility, right? And so I took that criticism and said, so you would really like for someone else to take on the responsibility rather than you personally?
Well, sometimes that works. Sometimes, but not always.
Oh. So if it worked every time, how would that help you?
Well, I don't think that's possible.
So you're beyond help. Is that what you? No, that's a summary.
The resistance to take on personal responsibility, I can see that being a great discussion in a class.
Oh yes, yeah, we definitely could go in that direction. All right, these are the 5 techniques. There are many other communication techniques, as you know, more sophisticated. I call the ability to master I statements a 200-level course. Most people have to master these first. I see these as, first class, 101. Prerequisite for I statements and how to be assertive without being aggressive. Those are all communication skill techniques. The more you master those, the better you're going to be able to keep that door of communication open. I have found some combination of these 5 effective in every conflict I've ever been in. Either personally, professionally, or that I've been mediating in. Summary. Conflict can be positive or negative. In fact, conflict is inevitable. You cannot have life without conflict. All those positive things we listed early on are at our disposal if we let conflict happen, if we invite it into our lives, and then bring to it the skills necessary to pull out those positive potential. I can't guarantee you that it's always going to be positive. But if it's inevitable, let's figure out a way to make it as positive as possible, as often as possible. Conflict has a particular depth and a particular impact, and we can have control over that impact. We can mitigate some of the negative impact with the particular skills that we're going to teach you here today. And effective management of conflict begins with you. So we're going to give you these skills to be able to go out and use them personally and professionally. Questions, thoughts, concerns, frustrations?
I think this is going to be one of the most impactful pieces of the module.
Yeah.
It's really a learning point of changing mindset and reconfiguring one's ability to negotiate.
Exactly, and or communicate. Yeah, that, not against communication skills. I'm against putting all of our eggs in that basket.
Right.
That's all. Yes. Yeah, what I find in this piece, my experience is in every setting I'm in, standing up in front of this room, there is a threshold of trust that the presenter has to cross. The question is, how quickly can you get across that threshold of trust? Once you do, things begin to, the learning begins at that point. By describing this and literally reflecting back for them some of their own experiences, they start to trust this information and trust me. That, yeah, that's what happened. Oh, yeah, that criticism, that was what I was asking for. That's where it starts to raise that trust level, as well as the second point, the kind of aha, I've never thought about conflict this way before. Now, once I get that trust level, and, oh my God, I've never thought about conflict this way before, they begin to be open to thinking about conflict this way.
What I like about what you're saying is that conflict has such a heavy connotation of
Yes.
negativism, that it's a problem. And so many divorces and so many family relationships that are dissolving before your very eyes are around, we have so much conflict, And I think that I love the fact that we can take conflict and turn it into a positive, that this relationship, this is normal.
Yes.
Versus we are just the worst two people to be in this relationship.
Right.
But let's use it as an opportunity for growth and for really getting closer and understanding each other's needs, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
And that to me is what really, you can really get them to open up to seeing it as a positive as well as.
Yes. One of the things I use sometimes is shock value. I tend to have, part of my teaching style is hyperbole, where I will say something and it's extreme and go, whoa, and get that shock value. So one of the things I'll say sometimes, I believe that conflict prevention is an oxymoron. You can't prevent conflict. And so most people, when they actually get into a situation, we have this conversation, it's not that we prevented the conflict from happening, it's that we're better at resolving it than we thought, and it was smooth. It went easy. Conflict's inevitable. There's no way you're not going to have it. Expect it, look for it, invite it sometimes, and bring those skills to it. Yes?
On the negative sides of conflict, would it be worthy to put in, something on, like, for corporations, costs an average of 2.8 hours per work week per employee? Put it in another slide.
I don't know about the slide. I think depending on where we are and what our audience is, those things are perfect things. Remember, these are just prompters.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking is if they're reading it, they're like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
So, or even we say it, hey, you're losing an average of for every 25 employees, that's $84,000, whatever it is.
Yeah. And one of the things I want to, there's a certain degree of sales that takes place up here. I try to minimize the sales. So those kind of things, I think, would to convince them that they need to be hiring us or doing something. If I'm already in this room, then they've already measured some form of the cost, and I don't have to convince them too far.
I think to Mike's
84,000.
$84,000 a year.
I think to your point, when you're in a group and you've got people who are linear thinkers and those that are contextual thinkers, the ones that kind of take all the feeling in the air versus the ones who are hard data, wired, that you have to appeal
Beautiful.
to both sides. So if you're just touchy-feely, and again, my experience is if you don't talk about a concept that has some results, that's very results oriented in the corporate world.
Beautiful.
They say, who needs this
Touchy-feely stuff. Yeah.
SHI.
Yes.
You really, I don't want to, and then they turn off, and they really are not interested. But I think so. You have to have some. This is a business issue. This is
Brilliant
a
point.
productivity issue. You have to
Yes.
really coach it, but you got to bring that balance because I personally am not a data-driven person necessarily. I'm more of a results and how things feel.
Right.
So a lot of the data would really turn me off. However, you might be, Rudy, somebody who really needs that in order for our training to be credible or our concepts to be credible.
Brilliant point.
And I didn't mean to make it as a sales point. What I was trying to say is just for the impact of what conflict is.
Can do. Yep.
Yeah, if they're losing, and we're
It's a
obviously
business
already
issue.
there, so they know to do.
Yeah.
But for the buy-in of why they're here.
Yep.
You're losing this much, especially as managers in leadership.
And I
You're
think
losing this much money, or you're failing in this many projects.
And
Here's your buy-in.
And you're losing respect of others along with the results not being bottom line as effective as you were put in this place to create or whatever.
And brilliant point. To know my audience and know who those people are and to be able to talk to them, to have both of those things, yes. Now, that it's necessarily a slide, it doesn't necessarily have to be.
I wasn't thinking
Yeah.
like a slide, I was just thinking,
The talking point,
the talking
definitely.
points,
Yep.
But I appreciate
if it does go into slowing amount.
I appreciate you putting it in numbers because that's not where I could go personally as easily in a group. So I think that having that data somewhere when somebody is a non-believer and they're saying, "Oh, come on, give me a break," I got to probe. I mean, either you say it or you don't.
Right, right.
And you go, okay, well, where do I go from here?
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to pull out of the bag something a little more hardcore to say, look, da 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 da.
Yep.
Your past practices are costing you about $84,000 for every 25 employees.
Or you could even take the moment and ask them. If you were going to be, on average,
Per employee.
per week, how much would you say per employee takes up time with conflict? And whatever number they pick. Well, now you're crunching the formula.
Yeah.
You know?
And maybe that's what they need is to put their spin on it in order to digest it and marinate a
Yeah.
little bit around it.
And they say, I'm not losing any. Then you go, well, then
Here's the national average.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's what the national average is, and you're doing better than that.
So we may need a little cheat sheet like that somewhere in our notes to give us something to fall back on.
What you'll do is you'll absorb. You'll have it in there.
Throw it out to the group.
Yes.
Are you a data person or a...
I like more like Rick. You kind of have to figure out if there's a numbers hardcore, particularly if he or she is the key manager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He or she's a numbers
I think
person.
that's a good point,
And
sure.
you need to be able to
Yeah. Excellent point.
speak to him or her in a language they understand.
This is, like you said, this is the first the first module. We're done with that. And then we had credits just to keep some sort of accountability in terms of where this material has basically come from. It's come from a lot of different places, but there it is.
Is that another book that you have at that bottom one?
It is another book, and we can talk about that over lunch if you like. And then I'll get Bernard to turn the camera off. You know where it's at? IT off. I don't know if I'd be touching buttons on a $25,000 camera.
I've worked on $30 million pieces of equipment.
Yeah, but the government was backing you. In this case, I'm backing you. Yeah, there you go. Here, let me go find him. That won't take.
I can see stop before.
Yeah,
Let's go.
I'll go find him. And then I want to posit the possibility of, rather than jumping into the next one, which would take an hour and take us into 12:30, let's talk about the possibility of maybe going to lunch now. Or if it's too soon, just tell me what you think.